Hello and welcome to GameSec. Treasure is an amazing developer originally composed of ex-Konami employees wanting to create original games instead of the sequels that they were doing at the time. I mean, these are the guys who made Super Castlevania 4 and Contra 3. So I figured I could devote an entire episode showing off every game that Treasure made. And man, did they start off with a banger. Gunstar Heroes was released for the Genesis in September of 1993. This 1 or 2 player game is a kick-ass run and gun. Well, mostly a run and gun. You have 4 different weapons to collect and you have 2 slots for the weapons. This means that you can switch between them or even combine them. Any weapon can be combined with another for unique effects. You have a variety of melee attacks as well that you can use when your weapons are disabled, some of which can be used with your weapons still turned on. You have a health meter represented by numbers, and this can be increased during the game if you're careful not to lose too much life during a stage. The gameplay is wild and crazy, just absolutely bombastic. I love it. It shows Treasure's personality right away. It also demonstrated their love of bosses because there are a bunch of them in here, more than most games of the time, but they're just getting started. We certainly can't ignore 7 Force, a boss with 7 different forms. This will end up being Treasure's most favorite thing ever. There's a level where it plays like a shooter. Well, an unconventional shooter is you change your firing direction at will. The one thing that irks me about this one is that the enemies can grab you. I really do not like that, and I am not enjoying my life when that happens. Also, this dice maze is a great idea, but it feels like it takes too long as you're most likely going to be sent back to redo any of the rooms that you missed. The graphics are outstanding with great artwork, lots of detail, and tons of color. You'd never think that the Genesis was bad at color playing this one. There are also lots of really cool effects. All of this in a paltry 8 meg cartridge. The music is super cool as well, with lots of great subdued melodies and good sound quality. The best thing about this one might be that it came with a fruit roll-up. I'm not lying, it did. I'm amazed that Sega of America released this one themselves. Usually they were concentrating on their own developed in the US direct that would go on to give the console an unfairly tarnished reputation. Next, we have McDonald's Treasureland Adventure, released only a couple of weeks after Gunstar Heroes in Japan. I like how this game has treasure in the title. You control Ronald McDonald. You remember Ronald McDonald? If you're watching this channel, you probably do. Congratulations, you are old. This actually started development before Gunstar Heroes, but took a bit longer because the staff had to constantly take breaks to eat delicious double cheeseburgers and chicken McNuggets. Probably with hot mustard sauce, at least that'd be my choice. As you can see, this one is a platformer. You can jump, shoot magic as your attack, and use your scarf to ascend at certain points in the level. This game is extremely difficult on the normal mode. You'll have problems even hitting some of the bosses. The enemies in the upper levels take so many hits to defeat that they're not even worth fighting. This is probably why the game defaults to the beginner difficulty. You come across shops during some levels where you sell stuff to yourself? Is that what's going on? There are also some bonus areas where you can pay to play a puzzle game where you need to match 3 tiles of the same thing. This is pretty stiff, but I guess it's a nice way to waste the money that you collect. The graphics are once again full of color. Not as nice as Gunstar Heroes as it doesn't have as many impressive effects, but it certainly looks way better than Global Gladiators, which is the other McDonald's game on the console. It sounds better as well, with fun music and overall a pleasant vibe. This is a good game, but it could be even better if it spent more time in the oven. I don't feel that it's accessible to the target audience, which is young children. Treasure's third game was Dynamite Headdy on the Genesis. This is another platformer. This one takes place entirely on a puppet stage, which lends itself to some unique visuals and settings. You attack with your head by throwing it. At some points you can even change your head temporarily for enhanced attacks or what have you. If you don't like the head that you have, you can always cancel it with the A button. Well, that is unless you get this crappy head, then you're gonna have to wait it out. This one will remind you of both Gunstar Heroes and the McDonald's game. This scene looks like it was lifted straight out of Gunstar Heroes, for example. And it even has a set of stages that play like a shooter. You use your head to help boost you up to new platforms, just like Treasureland Adventure. Be careful because sometimes you get taken to a bonus game where you need to use your head to bounce these basketballs into the basket. Yeah, I consider this a punishment to the player because it lasts forever. The gameplay is balanced, but still pretty tough, and Sega of America had to make it even tougher for the North American market. You start out with no continues in this version, but you get 2 in the Japanese game. Thank you, Sega of America! Boy, they sure loved to meddle where they weren't welcome. They also changed the graphics of a few things here and there, as well as the names of the stages. Most stage names are now puns parodying movie titles. That's pretty exciting. The graphics are once again full of color and a joy to look at. There are plenty of effects here as well. I really like this stage where it keeps tilting towards you. You're not really in any danger of falling off, but it's still a cool idea. The music is mostly pretty good, nothing worth complaining about. There are a bunch of voices in here as well, and the quality is really good. Try this one out if you want a challenge.
You've got a secret bonus point. Yeah!
Next is Yu Hakusho Makio Toetsusen for the Mega Drive. This is one of 2 Yu Hakusho games for the Mega Drive, but this is the only one by Treasure. It's based on a manga, because of course it is. This is a fighting game where you play as various characters. It will feel familiar if you're used to fighting games for the most part. Up jumps and you have a few special moves that are done Street Fighter style. You have a block button, but of course I never press it out of spite for that design choice. Where are my hold back homies at? Buttons A and B are your attacks. A seems to be your left side and B are the right-handed attacks. You have a blue meter that drains when you use your special moves. However, you can recharge it mid-battle if you need to, but that leaves you vulnerable. Lastly, you can switch planes Fatal Fury style. Using a 6-button controller lets you use dedicated buttons for back and forward dashing as well as switching planes. Each match is only 1 round, but they tend to last longer than a single round of most other fighting games. Naturally, this can be played with 2 players, but it can also be played by 3 or 4 players simultaneously. You have a battle royale, free-for-all, a tag team type of deal, 3 versus 1 or 2 versus 2, and so on. The gameplay doesn't noticeably suffer much during these fights, which is pretty impressive. Graphically, the game looks nice, but it's not as colorful as Treasure's first 3 games were, leaning into more of a dark look this time with gratuitous dithering. Some stages have nice detail, while others, like this dumb arena, barely have any detail at all. The game's also letterboxed because I guess that's a rule or something whenever you have a Japanese-made fighting game on a 16-bit console. Tell me I'm wrong. Every scene does have some excellent scrolling though. I just wish there were more scenes as they start to repeat a lot. There are tons of Japanese voices all shouting words and phrases because that's just what you do when you fight. The voices are a little grainy and a step down in quality from Dynamite Headdy, but there are often multiple digitized sounds playing at the same time. The music sounds great, and the composition is mostly pretty good. This one wasn't released in English territories because of the license, obviously. Visual shock, speed shock, sound shock. Now it's time to the 68,000 Heart on Fire Alien Soldier for Mega Driver's Custom. On the Mega Drive was Treasure's next game. It was never released physically in North America. This is the game that Treasure always wanted to make, nothing but bosses. The action between the bosses only serves to refill your power meters. This game is absolutely nuts. It does not mess around. There are a bunch of different weapons that you can have, and you can hold 4 of them. They run out of power as you use them and soon become useless because you can go straight to hell. The less power your weapon has, the less damage it inflicts. You can switch weapons at any time, but it's a tad cumbersome as the action doesn't stop to wait for you. You have a teleport dash that you can do by pressing down and jump. You're invincible while doing this. If your life bar is flashing, that means you can do the flame teleport, which does massive damage if it connects with the boss's weak spot. The graphics are incredibly cool, with tons of effects, nice color, and very well drawn artwork. Naturally, each boss is unique and, of course, strange, with lots of thought put into their designs. The sound and music are also great, very reminiscent of Gunstar Heroes, especially during this game's version of the 7-Force boss, which takes about 7 hours. The game's biggest flaw might be the extreme difficulty, which limits its potential audience. It's very hard, even on the easy setting. Like, screw this water level in particular. Still, this is a trip worth taking, even if you need to use a cheat to see everything. Hey, no shame in that for this one. Like Crusader was Treasure's last game on the Genesis. This one is an isometric action RPG that might remind you of Landstalker. Unlike that one, this one uses the entire screen. The controls are also leagues better, as here you walk in the direction that you press, and you can even move in a full 8 directions. Take that, Landstalker! You move around the towns, talk to people, explore the countryside, and naturally move through dungeons and solve their puzzles. The control is mostly great, though the collision can be a bit weird, especially when you're trying to browse items in the various shops and the dialogue keeps popping up. But it's still workable. You have a basic menu which is easy to navigate and also lets you see a map. The game definitely has some arcade roots, like when you enter a room and you're sometimes told what to do.
Answer the riddle. Beat them.
I don't know why, but I absolutely love that. Of course, you'll have to contend with dastardly bosses as well. The graphics here are mostly excellent and a step above Landstalker in many ways, at least the environments. Your sprite, though, is a bit lanky and the animations are perhaps a bit awkward. The music is fantastic and quite fitting for the game. I haven't played this one very far despite having owned it forever. I always mean to keep playing it, but I never do. It's not one of Treasure's most celebrated games, so maybe it gets worse, but I always enjoy it for the first 45 minutes or so. You'll notice that I'm not including ports to the Game Gear like Gunstar Heroes, Dynamite Headdy, and McDonald's Treasureland because, well, those ports weren't handled by Treasure. So anyway, let's get into Treasure's 32-bit and, by extension, 64-bit era. Guardian Heroes on the Saturn was Treasure's first game on a platform that wasn't the Genesis. This is basically a beat-em-up that lets you make choices on what to do next after you win a stage. There are 30 levels overall, but you'll only see 10 on each playthrough, which gives you reason to play again and again if you want to see everything. It's very reminiscent of that Yu Hakusho game, only way more fleshed out. You press up to jump like a typical fighting game. The different planes return in this one, but here you have 3 planes instead of 2, thanks to the incredible new 32-bit power. There are tons of combos that you can do in this one, and you can probably juggle enemies forever if you want. Between stages, you can level up your character's abilities in several different areas. You can play with a friend, of course, but the Versus mode lets you have 6-player simultaneous battles. The graphics are very nice with a hand-drawn cartoon look. The art style is definitely very Treasure, and we'd see this style in some of their upcoming games. A few of the sprites can get really blocky though, which I was never a big fan of. Maybe they needed to do that for technical reasons to keep things from flickering too much or slowing down, I don't know. This game puts a ton of stuff on screen and it gets chaotic, but hey, that's Treasure for you. The sound and especially the music stand out with some really fun tunes that never get old. What a great way for Treasure to land on the Saturn. It was later remastered for the Xbox 360. Here it's finally in 16:9 widescreen and you can also put this ugly ass filter on it, ew. But thankfully you don't have to. Mischief Makers on the Nintendo 64 was the first Treasure game not published by Sega. Enix did the honors here. It's also one of the few 2D games on the system. Is this a platformer? An action game? Don't ask me, I have no idea. It's kind of its own thing, really. Treasure is the king of overthinking their gameplay mechanics, and this might be one of the more egregious examples of that, at least so far. The goal is basically to get to the exit of any given stage. You can grab onto these face things and shake them to advance yourself. Yeah, these ugly faces are everywhere, but you can't just grab onto any of them, only the round ones. You can also grab onto things to control them in order to bash down barriers, or maybe even to rotate the entire level around. The control is wicked hard to get used to, for me at least. I've played this one many times, and at no time since this game was released did I ever feel that I had a good grasp over the controls. I personally think that this one is over-designed. Lots of Nintendo 64 fans love it though. The visuals are rather ugly, sporting a pre-rendered look that has not aged very well. They did turn off the Nintendo 64's blurs though, so that's good. The game's also letterboxed just like a 16-bit fighting game. I can't quite figure out why. Anyone know? I still feel that this might be one of the worst looking games by Treasure. Audio-wise, it fares better. While I also feel that their previous games all had better music, this one isn't bad. This game just isn't for me. The best recommendation I can give is for you to try it for yourself.
Shake, shake. Yeah. Shake, shake. Yeah.
Silhouette Mirage came to the Saturn next. It came to the PlayStation a short time later, but this is the Saturn game since it came first. Basically, if you face one way, you're red, turn around, and you're blue. This corresponds to Silhouette and Mirage. Basically, each enemy is best battled with one side or the other. You can use the opposite color, but you'll be penalized. You can switch which side is red and blue, but it costs you a huge chunk of spirit energy, and you want all the spirit energy you can get, otherwise you'll be pretty weak. The game is always frustrating for me when I first start playing, but once I adapt to it, it starts becoming enjoyable. It usually only takes a few minutes or so though. As with most of Treasure's stuff, it can be pretty over the top, and it's great because of that. It can be a little annoying when an enemy goes to one side of the screen and you need to get behind them to attack, but they generally don't stay there for very long. The graphics once again are super good, with highly detailed backgrounds, sprites that couldn't be from anyone else but Treasure, and even some cool effects here and there. The PlayStation version replaces any dithering that's in the Saturn game with transparencies, but there are some transparencies in the Saturn game. The sound is fine and the music is super good, lending to the energetic mayhem that the game offers. The Saturn game stayed in Japan, but Working Designs released a PlayStation version in North America. Radiant Silvergun for arcades and the Saturn was next. This is a vertical shooter, probably one of my favorite vertical shooters, and I love playing it despite not being anything close to an expert at it. You have 6 different weapons that you can use at any time simply by pressing a different button. You can also press one of the shoulder buttons for a sword attack. You can use this to sweep up purple enemy bullets to charge a meter. Once it's charged, you can let loose with a powerful super sword wireframe attack. There are also combos and whatnot to achieve. This is pretty much boss after boss after boss. Lots of these guys have long life bars, but hey, at least they have a life bar. As a result, it can be pretty tough, but again, I still enjoy it simply because it's well made. Well, pretty much. It can sometimes be easy to lose your ship in some of the chaos and you'll die, but that's rare. You just gotta keep your eye on the prize. The graphics are excellent in a sci-fi futuristic sort of way, and also technically for the Saturn as well. It runs at a constant 60 frames per second. Many of the bosses don't really look like anything, just discombobulated boxes combined together, but a lot of the bosses look pretty damn cool. The music by Hitoshi Sakimoto is moody and it really fits the game. Naturally, it stayed in Japan. However, eventually it did get remastered for the Xbox 360 and released worldwide. They handled this upgrade a lot better than they did Guardian Heroes in my opinion. This one's called Rakugaki Showtime. It's for the PlayStation. This is a weird fighting game. Well, it's kind of a fighting game. You're a paper cutout and you're in a ring with several other opponents. It's you against them. You can walk up to them and attack, but the gameplay consists mainly of throwing things at your opponents, kind of like dodgeball. Sometimes one of the face items will flash and throwing this will result in a super attack. There's a hand that sometimes appears to draw more items into the ring and even more enemies. Multiplayer mode allows up to 4 players simultaneously. Graphically, I really like the style that they're going for with the paper cutouts, but everything looks incredibly blocky, so it doesn't quite work here. It'd be much more effective on an HD console. The graphics otherwise are a bit plain. The music is nice, it features some energetic and enjoyable stuff. I can understand why this one stayed in Japan. It probably wouldn't have had a ton of appeal elsewhere back then. However, this game is quite rare since there was a lawsuit between Treasure and Enix over who owned the rights to the characters, and the game was quickly pulled from the shelves. Bangai-O came next, and it arrived on the Nintendo 64. This is a cool game that I never thought to try back in the day because the tiny graphics didn't appeal to me, but it's actually very fun. You fly your little guy around blasting everything from enemies to people's homes as they scream in horror. As you do this, you collect delicious fruit. It controls basically like a twin-stick shooter. You fire in the direction you press the C buttons. You can also unleash a flurry of heat-seeking missiles. You can swap mechs at any time, and they both have their advantages to the weapons that they fire. For example, the girl's green shots reflect off of the surfaces to reach hard-to-shoot things. Eventually you get to the boss, and these guys are often little, just like you. This is another game that can get tough pretty quickly, but it's still just so fun. The graphics are fine for what this game is, but like I said, they did make me overlook this game back then. The Nintendo 64 version stayed in Japan, but the Dreamcast version was released internationally. Supposedly, this has some streamlined features, but playing them back-to-back, I'm hard-pressed to tell much of a difference in the gameplay. The Dreamcast graphics are dimmer for some reason, unless you play the Japanese version. I think you should try this one out on either console. This one's called Sin and Punishment and is also on the Nintendo 64. This was only released in Japan and is the premier crosshair shooter on the console. You might prefer the term rail shooter. You play as a dude who runs around and shoots things. You aim with your reticle and take down targets. You can move left and right with the C arrow left and C arrow right buttons. You can jump with the right shoulder button. It takes some getting used to because you need to worry about moving yourself and not just the crosshair. In fact, you'll need to make sure your guy avoids lots of obstacles as the game progresses, otherwise you can lose a lot of life. Sometimes the camera will go to a side view like in this boss fight, and you can only move back and forth. I've got to imagine that my guy is probably kind of angry that he can't step left or right to avoid attacks just because the camera is somewhere else. Sometimes I have no idea what I'm supposed to do, and I need to look at a guide. The graphics are very blurry and grainy, even for the time, but hey, that's just how the Nintendo 64 is. Yeah, I said it. You know I'm not lying. I'm not sure why this one stayed in Japan. All of the voices are in English, so you'd think the localization would be fairly easy.
Good morning, Saki.
Good morning, Iron.
Overall, this is a good game that doesn't quite reach the heights of Panzer Dragoon, but it's still a fun crosshair shooter. Now we get into the year 2000 and beyond. Treasure changed their logo, released some more licensed stuff, as well as some other things that flew a bit under the radar. But make no mistake, they still released some impressively good games in this era. Treasure then moved to the PlayStation 2 with Silpheed, The Lost Planet. This is a quasi-overhead vertical shooter, and it was brought to North America by Working Designs. Your goal is to shoot things, and shoot things you will. This is a follow-up to the Sega CD game. Wait, didn't Treasure say they didn't do sequels? Basically, your ship has different shots that live on the right or left side of the ship, and each side can be equipped independently. Like here, I have a blue laser on the left side, while the right is dropping bombs. You can switch weapons mid-stage. You can earn more types of weapons as you complete each stage. As with the Sega CD game, I generally like to keep the default weapons on each side as I feel that they're just the most effective weapons. Aside from that, it's mostly a typical quasi-overhead shooter, though most of the bosses are bullet sponges, and of course there are a lot of them since it's a Treasure game. Most people remember the Sega CD one over this because of how impressive it seemed for the time. But this is the better of the two games. The graphics are quite sharp here, and the music is pretty good too. Give this one a go, most people don't even think about it. Stretch Panic on the PlayStation 2 was next. This is their weirdest game, and I've tried playing it a few times now. I think I've finally figured out how to properly play it. You're a little girl who has a scarf that can grab and stretch things. You want to pull and stretch things to defeat enemies, and you can also slam yourself into them. There are plenty of bosses, and these are all actually your vain sisters. You need points to enter the boss rooms from the hub room, and you get points by destroying the girls with the huge boobs. The control is pretty bad, especially the camera. Your instinct is to control the camera with the right analog stick, but no, that controls the scarf. You can snap the camera into position by pressing down on the left analog stick, but that doesn't really help very much. I'm amazed that this one was localized and brought out over here. Gotta give props to Conspiracy Entertainment for taking a chance at least. I've also gotta give props to Treasure for taking a chance with this weird-ass concept, even if it didn't quite work out. I'm pretty sure that they loved it in Japan though. Ikaruga was next, and it was released to the arcades, Dreamcast, and GameCube. This is the Dreamcast version here. Treasure is back to form with this vertical shooter. This is a spiritual follow-up to Radiant's Silvergun. I'd also say it's a spiritual follow-up to Silhouette Mirage as well. You can flip from black to white and back again at any time, and the shots you fire reflect this. You can absorb enemy bullets of the same color. Fortunately, the enemy can't, and you can kill them no matter what color you are. But if you hit them with the opposite color bullets, they'll die twice as fast. As you absorb enemy fire, you can store it and eventually release a super attack of that same color. This shooter plays smoothly, and I find myself really getting into it each time I play. It's incredibly fun and very difficult for me to put down. The graphics are fantastic, despite being devoid of a lot of color, and the music really adds to the intensity. This was only released in Japan at the time, and I imported it. It felt so weird buying a Dreamcast game again after the console had been discontinued here, but hey, I wasn't complaining. It did get released everywhere else on the GameCube though. It's also been released for the more modern platforms. Everyone should check this one out. Here we have Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster's Bad Dreams on the Game Boy Advance, retitled to Scary Dreams in the US. Not sure why the name changed, but okay. This one is a single plane beat 'em up. It drags on and on, it's super repetitive, and you'll grow tired of this one for sure. And this all happens within the first 15 seconds of playing the game for the first time. You fight animals, and then it drops more of those same animals in, and then you fight those. Then it drops even more in, and you fight those. Then, maybe some more. Eventually, if the game feels like it, it'll let you advance the screen to the next part where it happens again. You can do some special moves, Street Fighter style. You can also press the right shoulder button and your partner will come in and do their thing, which hopefully causes some damage. You can choose your partner, by the way. I'm surprised that I played this one as long as I did, which was only about 10 minutes. I don't get the feeling that they wanted to make this one. Around this time, Treasure was also working on Tiny Toon Adventures, Defenders of the Universe for the PlayStation 2 and GameCube. This is the PlayStation 2 version. This game was cancelled before it could be released, but is mostly complete from what I can tell. You're trying to help aliens save their world after they come to you with their troubles. This game plays almost exactly like that Rakugaki Showtime fighting game for the PlayStation. You remember, I talked about that a little bit ago? It plays like dodgeball. But the game also uses the same play mechanics for the adventure gameplay, and it just doesn't work well at all. You toss things at enemies and hit them, if you're lucky. You can also warp to the blue arrow platforms by double tapping the jump button, again, if you're lucky. Meanwhile, the enemy will quickly swarm you. It makes you wish that the game had normal controls that you'd find in any decent game. Jumping from raft to raft here should be easy, but it isn't. You can't stay on your own raft because then you have nothing to throw. It's just not a well thought out way to play an adventure game. The graphics are fine and move at 60 frames per second, which is nice. The game features the voice cast from the cartoon show, well, the ones that were still alive in 2002 anyway. The voices are weirdly muffled for a PS2 game.
This is Hampton Pig, Plucky Duck, and Babs Bunny. No relation.
There's no official reason that this game wasn't released, but I can think of two. One, Tiny Toons hadn't been around for a long time, and I'm thinking that the Game Boy Advance game didn't sell very well. Two, the game sucks. Hell, that's probably the main reason. This one's called Hajime no Ippo the Fighting, and it's on the Game Boy Advance. This is a boxing game that's based on a manga. It's got a cool first-person view. I absolutely suck at boxing games though, and I don't really have much of a desire to improve my skills at such games, so I can't do very well at this. Still, it does look cool, and if you like boxing games based on mangas that didn't get released outside of Japan, maybe give this one a go. It's Warioworld on the GameCube. As you can imagine, you play as Wario in this 3D-ish platformer. You run around punching enemies and collecting coins. You can vacuum up the coins with your mouth to collect them all quickly if you want. You also need to collect a number of red crystals which are stored in various rooms in order to fight the various bosses. And those bosses are all pretty fun to fight, especially the big bosses of each world. The levels are huge and get longer and longer as you progress. The graphics are mostly pretty nice and everything looks sharp for the time. The audio is also quite good, well, except for maybe Wario's constant chatter. Give this one a try. Also on the GameCube is Dragon Drive, D-Master's Shot. Sounds like an interesting game of golf, right? Nope. It's based on a manga, bet you never would have guessed. You start the game hanging from the feet of your dragon. You fly around and shoot things that are marked on the map in the upper right corner of the screen. This goes on for a little bit and then your dragon evolves into a bigger creature. At least I think that's what happened. This game kind of looks like Panzer Dragoon if it were infested with evolved Pokemon creatures. I guess there's a market for that. You can lock onto enemies by pressing the Y button. This helps you hit them while also avoiding their fire. The X button will let you dash left or right, whichever direction you're pressing. The R trigger is your gas button, and L can move you backwards. Sometimes you'll collect cards that certain enemies drop when they're defeated. You use these by pressing the corresponding direction on the D-pad. These can come in handy as they can give you a powerful bomb, increase your strength, or maybe even restore some of your life. Each stage has many sections and they go on for quite a while. Graphically, it's about average for a GameCube title, maybe a little below. The music can be good, but it stops and starts abruptly. You don't expect that kind of sloppiness from Treasure. The game as a whole could use a bit more polish, but is still worth trying. We go back to the Game Boy Advance with Astro Boy Omega Factor. This definitely feels like more of an old Treasure game. You play as a robot child, which is a character created in the 1950s. Your main attacks are your fists and sometimes your feet. You even have a finger laser. If you have enough energy, you can blast a super thick laser, or machine guns from your butt. You also have a jetpack. You basically move from place to place while fighting enemies, and then larger blocky versions of those same enemies, which makes it kind of feel like that one Tiny Toons game on the Game Boy Advance. Fortunately, this game is much more enjoyable. Naturally, there are a lot of bosses to fight. This is another game with a version of the 7-Force boss. You'll often get the chance to upgrade one of your abilities. If you neglect upgrading your sensors, some areas can be rather tough to see. You even get a break sometimes in the form of a shooter stage. This is a good game, but each time I play it, I've usually had my fill by stage 3 as it does become a bit repetitious. Unfortunately, there isn't a password or anything that would fix this. The graphics are quite nice and feature some scaling and rotation. The music sounds like it wants to be Gunstar Heroes or Alien Soldier, but it's not quite that good. Overall, this is a fun, if repetitive, game. After this, we got Gradius V on the PlayStation 2. Wow, right back to where they started, making sequels to games for Konami. This is why they left, but now it's no big deal. So this game is definitely a true Konami Gradius game in a roundabout way. And what can I say? Other than that, this is one of the best Gradius games ever. I used to be much better at this game than I am now because I haven't played it for a while, and everything about this one is top notch once you get a feel for it and power yourself up. Now, this sounds stupid to say, but the more you play, the better you'll be able to do. Not just because of practice, but you unlock more continues for each hour of game time, just like Treasure's other shooters. So anyone can beat this, eventually. I really love being able to lock my options in place by holding the R2 button. This is a game changer. It changes how you play the game. I mean, I guess that's what game changers do. Much of the stage design is built around you knowing how to do this. You can set it up in the options to respawn right where you died, and you can collect the options, though your other power-ups and speed increases will be gone. It's still great to restart right there and have some extra firepower with your options should you manage to recollect them. The graphics are excellent. They're totally 3D even though the gameplay is strictly 2D. They never seem out of place with the 2D gameplay, and they don't look cheesy like some games with 3D graphics and 2D gameplay do. I do wish there were more variety in the stages, but oh well. Although I miss the heroic and triumphant music that graced the previous games in the series, the soundtrack here by Hitoshi Sakimoto is incredible. It's just so perfect. The entire sound experience is done extremely well. This game means business, but it doesn't overwhelm the player despite being difficult. This might be one of Treasure's best, at least in my opinion. Now Treasure's making sequels to their own games with Advanced Guardian Heroes on the Game Boy Advance. Sega owned the rights to the original, so they had to license it from them and then have Ubisoft publish it. This one's a beat 'em up, but the 3 planes are gone. You now move all over the screen like any other beat 'em up. Stage 2 is much too long. I guess Treasure was super enamored with the stages they were making it. It takes forever and it has a ton of slowdown. You have lots of magic that you can use as well as a shield, which I often forget about. The graphics aren't bad, but they're far from inspired. The cutscenes are the best looking parts of the game with some of that trademark Treasure style. The music is pretty good, considering the limitations of the system. Overall, this one can be fun, but it's like a small toddler compared to the mighty Saturn game. Treasure's final title on the Game Boy Advance was Gunstar Heroes, a sequel to the very first game they had released. Sega went ahead and published this one themselves like they did with the original. Although it is a sequel and references the original in the storyline, this is more of a remake with the same levels, just with new stuff added in. Now you have an approach to each level in a ship that's piloted by Yellow. These usually feature some cool special effects provided by the Game Boy Advance hardware, like this one, where it's reminiscent of the arcade version of Thunderblade. But that's not all, we even get a bit of Galaxy Force in here. And we can't forget about the Flicky stage, where it's literally just Flicky, but with crazy Game Boy Advance rotation. The gameplay feels smooth. Instead of collecting different weapons, you have 3 of them at all times and can cycle through them whenever you want. They can't be powered up, but your life meter still can. The story beats here are the same. Everything that happened before happens again, but it's new this time, somehow. And of course, 7 Force is in here. Can you imagine it not being here? Treasure was really enamored with the scaling and rotation in this one, especially the rotation. It's all over the place. Everything generally looks good for the GBA. The music is all tunes from the Genesis, redone for the Game Boy Advance. They sound good, but I think the Genesis game sounds better. You do get some voices in here though. Overall, it's a good game for sure, but it loses any original identity it may have otherwise have had since it copies the original so closely. Now we get into the later years of Treasure, where they did yet even more licensed stuff that they really didn't have much creative control over, but there's still some interesting stuff here. The DS became the hot new portable, and Treasure graced it with Bleach, the Blade of Fate. This is a one-on-one fighting game featuring all of your favorite characters from the Bleach property. I'm unfamiliar with Bleach, but as a fighting game, it's not bad considering that it's running on a DS. The D-pad and the buttons are minuscule, so fighting games here can be a chore. You have a weak, medium, and strong attack and lots of special moves that you can do. I found that I could do them when I intended to do them pretty well. On the touchscreen, you have some cards. You can touch these to affect your opponent in one way or another, like restricting their ability to jump for a bit. You can even do special moves by touching the bottom screen, but I really don't like to take my eyes off of the action for any of this. There's a story mode which has lots of lengthy dialogue between each fight, which might be cool if you're a Bleach fan. The graphics look nice on the small screen and are animated fairly well. It likes to scale in and out like a Neo Geo fighter. The sound is typical for a fighting game, lots of shouting and decent if forgettable music.
This is Bangai! And Successor!
Then we have Bleach Dark Souls, also on the DS. No, this has nothing to do with what you think of when you hear Dark Souls. This is basically an update to the previous game, similar to how Street Fighter II Champion Edition is to regular Street Fighter II. You can now switch planes at any time. You could do this in the previous game, but only under special conditions. Otherwise, this is more of the same, only slightly updated for your enjoyment. Treasure came back to a classic with Bangai-O Spirits on the DS. This was the last game published by ESP. I really like the original. This one, not as much. Mainly because it is incredibly difficult. You do get an extremely lengthy tutorial because every game needs that these days, but I prefer games that simply don't need them. The control has been changed and now you shoot in the direction that you're facing. It's unfortunately no longer twin stick style. You also have your super attack with up to 100 missiles. That can result in a lot of slowdown. Basically, you need to destroy all of the targets in a stage instead of roaming around and fighting a boss like the original. You come under attack right away, so good luck! There are a lot of stages here, like the puzzle ones. There are even some that let you roam around. All in all, I just don't really care for this as a follow-up. This is Bleach versus Crusade on the Nintendo Wii. Yep, another Bleach game, and yes, it's also another fighting game. This one's a 3D fighter though. Basically, you have a few attacks. One of them is done by waggling the Wii remote. Yes, I love this era in video gaming. And by that I mean I don't. The arenas are all very large and you'll find yourself far away from your opponent, so you'll be dashing around quite a lot as well. In addition, you can pick a secondary character. This kind of acts like the Capcom Versus fighting games. You can press a direction on the D-pad to swap them out to be your main. Or you can press a different direction to call them in for a combined attack. The graphics are all very simple and rendered in the cel shading style. The backgrounds are sparsely detailed. Even with so little going on, the game only runs at 30 frames per second, which isn't ideal for a 3D fighting game. Or any fighting game. The sound naturally has lots of yelling like any other fighting game, and the music is fine. This one was only released in Japan, and I'm okay with that. Treasure's second and last game on the Wii was Sin and Punishment: Star Successor. This is a great follow-up to the Nintendo 64 game. I don't like praising controls on the Wii, but this game controls so much better here. The game is much more chaotic, but easier to deal with at the same time. You can point your reticle where you want it, and moving your guy around is so much easier to do since you can pay attention to him and react much faster. The game puts a bit more emphasis on melee attacks, and some bosses can only be damaged when you melee some of their projectiles back at them. You can easily dash, and you're invincible while you do this, just like an alien soldier. You still have to time it right though. There are a fair share of bosses here, though maybe not as many as you'd expect from a Treasure game. Instead, we get some really long stages, like this water tunnel for example. Man, okay guys, I get it, it's a water tunnel. I'm ready to look at something else now. The graphics are pretty good for the Wii, with lots going on everywhere, though the colors seem rather muted. The sound and the music are both pretty good as well, and they do not get old. All in all, this is a better game than the original, at least in my opinion, and probably many other people's opinion as well. It's also one of the better games that exist on the Wii. Here we have Bangai-O HD Missile Fury on the Xbox 360. This is an Xbox Live Arcade game, which means it only exists digitally. I like this one a lot more than the DS Bangai-O game, even though it has some of the same nonsense here and there. The twin stick control is returned and it feels good. You can even engage auto fire if you want. However, now you do your missile counterattack with the left trigger instead of the right, which takes some getting used to. You're constantly under attack in this one. Oh man. Your goal is to destroy all of the targets, similar to the DS game. But this one actually has some stages that remind me a lot of the original game, complete with the screaming people dying in their homes. Yeah, that's what you get for trying to be alive in your house. Occasionally, there are also bosses. This game is incredibly tough, but you need to figure out the trick for each stage. I ended up really liking this one. The graphics are fairly simple, but that's okay, it's Bangai-O. It actually looks pretty good for what it is. The music is great, and it reminds me of Treasure's old days. If you want a challenge, give this one a go. Oh wait, you can't. It's been delisted. Never mind. Here's Gaist Crusher on the 3DS. You can also say it as Gaist Crusher! It was published by Capcom. This action game was only released in Japan and is based on a manga. You play as a dude who gets to beat up enemies that appear. Kill them all and the stage is either over, or you move to a checkpoint where more enemies will spawn for you to beat up. You have a few different moves at your disposal, such as bringing out a giant-ass sword to help things, and help it does. As you fight, you have a meter on the bottom screen that builds up under this icon. When it gets full, you can touch it to release an extremely powerful attack that will take care of most of the enemies or damages bosses severely. Between the fights, there's a lot of rather lengthy dialogue that's fully voiced. Fortunately, this can be skipped. The graphics are good for the 3DS, and it can put a lot on screen at times. The 3D effect is rather poor, it's just usually 2D visual sunk into the screen a little bit. I recommend keeping the 3D off. The sound and music are pretty good, with lots of loud explosions. Overall, this is a decently fun game, but there's nothing truly notable about it. Treasure's final game was Gaist Crusher God, also on the 3DS, and it was released in 2014. This is basically the first game with an extra story added, some more enemies, and a couple of other small updates. Otherwise, everything I said about that one can be applied to this. Well, except that this has the distinction of being the final game that they'd ever make. For now. And there you go, every game by Treasure, except for Gunbeat, a canceled arcade game which I couldn't get a hold of. Personally, I feel that Treasure was at their best when they were doing their original work and not bound by a license. However, those licensed games help pay the bills, going all the way back to the McDonald's game. But I've got to say that Treasure definitely earned their name in the industry because they are a treasure to the industry. And they haven't made anything for over 10 years now. Do you think they'll release any more games? Probably. Hopefully. Anyway, what's your favorite game by Treasure? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. Hey friends, are you bored with wimpy Sega games? Well then you need to get the TurboGrafx 16 system today. There are tons of great games on the TurboGrafx like Vervamen, Ninjaspirit, Caddish, Raiden, some Rasalt, Vigilante, Dragon's Curse, Dungeon Explorer 1 and 2, Aeroblasters, Blazing Lazurs, Sidirms, Viaguous Tactical Gladiator, Super Valable, and of course Eastbook 1 and 2. So stop playing wimpy Sega games and get a TurboGrafx 16 now.